It's telling a story beyond the bodies and how they're positioned. There's a rhythm to the painting.
I think there are a lot of playfulness into this painting as well.
There's a lot of vulnerability and empathy to it.
Hello, my name is Hannah Uzor. I'm a student on the MA at the Slade.
I'm Mark Lee. I'm in second year MFA Fine Art.
My name is Netanya Schwab-Matalon. I'm currently here studying in London from California. I am in the Bachelor's of Fine Art program.
I think my style is varied, to be honest, and it's driven by my subject matter. My memories have really informed how I paint. I'm really interested in figures and how they are reflected in landscape or in a setting. And I remember as a child going on a road trip, and my dad had noticed that when I came back home, I'd painted the entire scene. And I think a lot of my work has to do with that evoking of that memory, a spectator looking in at a moment in time. The painting is actually a painting of my son when we went on holiday. The memory is definitely my son, but the landscape in which it's set in is an imagined space. Featuring my children in my work is a really sensitive, obviously, subject matter. How much you reveal and how much you conceal is really important. The interesting thing about Freud, he does create this sort of, tension. There's your desire to see, at the same time you're internalizing this sort of intense moment of him as an artist looking at the person that he's depicting and wondering about the dynamics of that intense moment of gaze. So it's capturing that emotion, I think, that Freud has, that I try to do in my work.
I made my entire portfolio for the Slade in the span of 2 months. So I was basically staying up for 20 hours a day, making painting after painting after painting. So the only subject I had on hand was myself. So I would just do obsessive self-portraiture in front of the mirror. And when I first came here, I was interested, the flesh, femininity, etc., and what that looked like representatively. But now I'm more sort of interested in relationships between figures. I'm really interested in the idea of a piece people can feel both embraced and repelled by, I guess.
I think I was always doodling, and then I was just looking at lots of graffiti. As I grew up, I was always drawing or painting figurative image. I was looking at a lot of manga or looking at a lot of films. I think I just bring all these different kind of inspirations and just put it onto painting and try to understand what they are. It's between real life and my imagination. I think I'm into this feeling of absurdity, but I think I'm trying to portray that idea in a lighter way. My first experience of seeing Lucian Freud was this exhibition, and my friend recommended me to go there since I was mainly focused in figurative painting. Throughout his kind of painting journey, I liked the way he was always exploring figure, like what I'm trying to do at the moment. I think he kept trying to understand what painting is.
My name is Daniel Herman. I'm the curator of modern and contemporary projects here at the National Gallery. We are now right here in the Suisse exhibition, Lucian Freud, New Perspectives. And we have our Slade students with us and want to hear how they think about these works by Lucian Freud. So what we're looking at right now is Bella and Esther from around 1987. And what we see is a portrait that's actually a double portrait. It's a very difficult genre to paint because you try to elicit relationships between two sitters on the canvas and convey that to the viewer.
Immediately I'm drawn to the composition and the awkwardness of how they're sitting, and at the same time they look very relaxed. The faces look very, if it's an intimate relationship, or it's telling a story beyond the bodies and how they're positioned. There's a rhythm to the painting.
And there's almost a certain stage set, isn't there? That something has been prepared for this moment of creating that intimacy as well.
Certainly, you can see how the legs sort of intertwine and interweave together. There's that contact point there that just really brings that intimacy, that relationship that they have together. And it's a very natural sort of the position of the leg in terms of, you know, how it was touching the other leg. And I think sometimes when you look at the painting, you'd have to probably take a second glance to see if that hand is actually the hand of the sister at the back, or actually if it's the hand of the girl in the foreground. That does say this is people that do know each other and that are relaxed in each other's, you know, proximity.
So what we are looking at right now is one of the very first paintings that Freud ever exhibited. It's a self-portrait painted in 1940. What I think is interesting about it is that we're witnessing how an artist is trying to make choices and how he's working out and working through how to paint and in which ways to paint.
I think when I came into this room and then saw this painting, it's something that I wouldn't expect from kind of his paintings. I think the figure doesn't really kind of make sense in a way. It has like very kind of small nose, a really kind of flat face, and it doesn't really have that kind of depth into this figure's face like his other works.
When you look at the painting like this and you think about your own practice, where do you see parallels? Where do you see differences?
I think I'm at the moment where I'm just trying to figure out how this kind of oil paint works, you know, onto the painting. And I think maybe we're in the kind of like same stage in a way, just
trying things out,
trying
actually
things out.
Figuring out how the material itself works.
Yes. I think there are a lot of playfulness into this painting as well. I mean, that's where I'm kind of relating my works.
What we're looking at here right now is a drawing. It's the painter's mother, dead, 1989. And what happened is that Lucian Freud's mother had been growing weaker and weaker as age went on. And in 1989 she passed away, and Freud actually sat at her deathbed drawing. And for me as an art historian, it's really interesting looking at this with a view of how other people have portrayed dead people. But of course, in the end, it's also portrayal of a body in a very different way. It's maybe much more tender.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of like vulnerability and empathy to it is immediately what I get, because when you're making a painting, especially when you're doing it standing up with this like thick impasto paint, it's all in the gesture of the elbow and the wrist, whereas this is all in the movement of the fingers.
I think Freud used the process of painting, of drawing, to create time between him and the sitters. And in a way, he created relationships through art. Of course, here the relationship is literally past, and he's just left with his pencil.
Because in the paintings, it's more of this illusion of a moment in time that he's capturing. And so it looks like one, narrative, cohesive picture, when in reality, it's an amalgamation of, hours upon hours of work. So that, I think, is really interesting, in that this is like, I guess, the true, moment.
You're looking at Freud in the way that you have done right now. What is your impression? What are your thoughts?
I think it was really interesting to see his journey as a painter.
The physicality of the paint in terms of how these figures are so over fleshed out, perhaps even over painted or over saturated on the canvas cloth, in terms of just getting this sense of weight and tenseness and sort of fragility.
I think for me, Freud is somebody who spent a lot of time looking, looking at his subject matter, and it's an intense looking that's reflected back in how he then paints the work. So I think for me, it's an intensity of a moment that's captured in his work.